Discover 3. Spine-chilling true stories of sinister hauntings and cursed secrets unleashed. The shadows of Sarah's new home seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Each creak of the old floorboards echoed like a whisper, filling her with dread. The peeling wallpaper was a testament to years of neglect, but it was the ominous chill in the air that set her nerves on edge. As a nurse in her early 30s struggling alone to raise 2 young children in a rundown suburb, Sarah couldn't afford to let fear consume her, yet here she was, caught between the harsh reality of her life and the unnerving feeling that something was deeply wrong in this dilapidated house. Her late husband had left behind a meager life insurance policy spent on bills and necessities, but this house, his family's crumbling relic, offered a glimmer of hope. Friends from the community murmured warnings about its unlucky legacy, yet she clung to the dream of renewal. After all, it had once been a family home, a place to cherish. Little did she know, the history that clung to these walls was steeped in betrayal and despair. As Sarah settled in with Mia and Ethan, the nights grew longer and shadows flickered where candlelight danced. It began with strange noises, the fluttering of something unseen, voices just beyond hearing, and children's giggles echoing through the hall. The kids claimed there was a man in the walls, but Sarah dismissed their fears as figments of childish imagination. But one evening, she felt a sudden chill, a whisper against her skin that sent icy fingers down her spine. "Mom!" Mia exclaimed, wide-eyed. "Did you hear him?" With a dismissive laugh, Sarah brushed it off, the panic knotting her stomach. Still, the uneasy feeling gnawed at her. Her husband's past held secrets she hadn't uncovered yet, and whispers of a hidden treasure haunted the town. Those curses danced through her mind as she saw the glances from neighbors filled with judgment and pity. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Roles shifted further when her daughter's kindergarten teacher, Ms. Fletcher, transformed from a nurturing figure to one that made Sarah feel uneasy. Her expressive eyes held a gaze that felt piercing, and the unsolicited conversations about the house stoked Sarah's fragility. "You're brave for living there," Ms. Fletcher had said one afternoon. Her voice dripped with a chill that made Sarah shudder. Tension escalated in the old house. Unearthly cries pierced the midnight silence, echoing through the halls, where shadows loomed larger than life. Scratching sounds from behind the walls sent Sarah's heart racing. Locked doors became prisons, isolating her from the world outside. The night she heard desperate pleas for help beneath the floorboards shattered any notion of safety. Betrayal and lost souls wafted through the air, settling in her heart like an unsettling presence ready to drag her into its depths of despair. In her darkest moment, the man in the walls finally revealed himself, a spectre haunting her, tethered to her husband's cursed past. The house trembled with an electric energy, daring Sarah to unlock its chilling secrets. Would it lead her to a buried treasure, one that promised prosperity, or was it simply a trap designed to tempt and betray once again? A price loomed, dark and insidious, and she stood at its precipice, ready to confront the truth, or become another lost soul entwined in the web of a malevolent spirit. The house felt alive. Every creak was a heartbeat, every whisper a plea. Sarah's adrenaline surged as the darkness deepened, crawling under her skin. She stepped into the narrow hallway, where the laughter once echoed, now replaced by silence so thick it felt suffocating. She clutched Mia's hand tightly, the child's warmth anchoring her to sanity. "Mom, he's back," The man! Ethan trembled, standing near the cracked wall. The whispering grew louder, swarming around them like a sinister wind. He told me to find the door. Ethan! Sarah's voice broke, panic rising. What door? His wide eyes reflected the dread that gripped her heart. The one he needs you to open. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah's resolve wavered. The idea of a secret door tingled with both hope and horror. Where did it lead? But before she could voice these thoughts, the scratching returned, clawing at the woodwork, a desperate sound that seemed to thrum with urgency. "Stay close," she instructed, inching toward the sound. As they neared, her attention was drawn to the wall, the sections of peeling paint and crumbling drywall, arranged as if hiding something unsettling, a mystery that pulsed beneath. "I can feel it," Mia whispered, biting her lip. "That's just the old house settling," Sarah tried to assure her shaky daughter, but doubt laced her words. As she brushed her fingers over the wall, the scratching stopped. A tense silence enveloped them, pressing against her ears. Then she felt it. Cold fingers, ghostly and thin, trembled beneath her touch. Her breath hitched. "What the hell?" Before she could react, the wall shifted under her hand, revealing a small crack that yawned wider. Chilled air spilled forth, rippling with a faint, distant light. Sarah stepped back, heart racing, as shadows danced grotesquely in the growing gap. "Mom!" Mia tugged on her sleeve, eyes wide with fear. In that moment, adrenaline collided with fear. Sarah wanted to run, to escape whatever this was. Yet curiosity lured her close again. "Stay right here," she commanded, voice trembling. Crouching down, Sarah squeezed her body into the expanding fracture, the narrow opening bearing the unexpected. Inch by inch, she pushed through, the chill twisting around her like icy tendrils. Just beyond the threshold lay a small, hidden chamber. Dust floated in the light that emanated from a single flickering bulb. It illuminated a chest in the corner, ancient and ornately carved. Her heart raced. Could this be the treasure? With trembling hands she approached, whispering, "What are you hiding?" As she knelt before the chest and reached for the latch, a low, guttural voice filled the air, wrapping around her like a nightmare. "You shouldn't have come here." Frozen, Sarah's blood ran cold. The voice echoed from every corner, sealing her with dread. She turned to see a figure materializing from the shadows, eyes glowing with a malevolence that sent her sprawling backward. It was him, the man from the walls. "Leave this place!" he shrieked, the air vibrating with his rage. Sarah scrambled back, heart pounding, her children's screams drowning her courage. As she tore through the narrow entry, she felt his fingers brush her arm, a cold grip amplifying her terror. The shadows twisted, clawing at her and tugging her back toward the chest. What awaited her inside? Was it treasure or a curse? With a surge of panic, she burst out of the wall's breach, tumbling to the floor of the hall, gasping for breath. The energized presence lingered behind her, waiting, watching. "Mom, what did you find?" Mia's voice quivered from where Ethan clung to her side, eyes wide with fear. "Nothing," she gasped, still shaking from the encounter. "Nothing we want to know about." But deep down, dread settled in her gut like a lead weight. She could feel it, a dark current extending from the onyx chest, waiting in the hidden chamber. And the truth was clearer than ever. The man wanted something from her. With time running out, would Sarah choose to confront the animosity that lurked in her home, or would she flee with the shadows closing in around her? The night felt alive with foreboding, the atmosphere thickening with terrible secrets. Could she find another way out, or was the pull of the chest too strong to ignore? Desperation clawed at her heels, and she realized the darker truth. The answers she craved could cost her everything, perhaps even her soul. The air thickened, squeezing around Sarah as if the house itself was alive with aggression. Time felt frozen, yet it was slinking away with every beat of her heart. The cavernous silence was maddening, swirling with memories of those laughter-filled days, now haunted by dread. She took a step back, shoulders tightening, chest heaving. Ethan's quavering voice tore her thoughts apart. "Mum, we need to go." He pulled at her hand, eyes darting around, risking a glance down the hallway. Something lurked there, a pulse of darkness almost visible among the peeling wallpaper. "No," she whispered harshly, as if a callous phrase might draw the shadows back. "We have to figure this out." Mia clung to her waist, shaking hard, her tiny frame trembling against Sarah's side. "Mum, please." That tug of war inside her raged on, the chest, what it meant, what it could unleash. A soft moan escaped her lips. The gentle hum of the light bulb felt more like a warning now. What if, just what if, confronting the darkness first was the only way to save them? "Listen," she said, exhaling slowly. "I'll go back. I just need to look. I'll be right here." A frantic nod of agreement from Ethan, though his features warped from fear. Taking tentative steps toward the chamber again, her breath shallow and rapid, she felt a tug at the edges of her consciousness, a reminder of the cold presence that had almost claimed her. She was met by the crack in the wall, now barely wide enough to fit through. The light inside flickered violently, casting sinister shapes against the walls, twisting like constellations of horror. "Mom!" Mia's voice trembled despite the resolve wrapped around it. Sarah pressed another step forward. "Stay close," she murmured, squeezing through the crack, that penetrating chill wrapping tightly around her. She landed on her knees in the chamber, heart pounding like war drums in her chest, the ominous pulse of a living nightmare. The chest lay there, waiting, its carving seeming to writhe under the bulb's erratic glow. She felt the air grow heavier, charged with unspoken words and shadows, whispering secrets that clawed at her sanity. The voice came again, this time softer, just above a whisper that slithered around her ears. "Open it." She hesitated, fingers hovering over the latch. It felt wrong, 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 a forbidden song singing from the chest. The man's eyes loomed in her memory, a dark reflection of pain and wrath. "Why?" she murmured, her heart thrumming loudly against her ribcage. "What do you want from me?" Silence lay heavily like an oppressive weight before the answer soared back. A growl. "All will be revealed." With one swift motion, Sarah unlatched the chest, the rusted metal screaming in protest against the night. The lid creaked open, and a cloud of dust erupted, filling the room with a filthy haze. Light flickered in the haze, something glimmering within. What she saw made her blood run cold, a collection of trinkets, each one tied to echoing memories, drenched in darkness. "Mom!" Ethan screamed from outside the chamber. "Get out!" Shadows spiraled above her, trying to claw their way inside the opening. They surged closer, drawing energy from her panic. Sarah swallowed hard as she sifted through each object, a faded photograph, a shoe, a cracked locket, all shrouded in malevolence. Her hands trembled, pulse racing, heart filing with dread at the thought of each item holding the weight of lost souls. "Sarah," that voice hissed again, this time almost pleading. "You must understand." Suddenly, all sense of clarity shattered. The chamber trembled as images surged at the corners of her mind, whispers of lost children, tragic tales of despair mixing into cacophonous cries. The shadows twisted, now visible tendrils latching onto her skin, burning like ice. This was no ordinary treasure. "Mom! It's here!" Ethan cried, his panicked voice drawing closer. "No!" she shouted, backing away as the darkness lunged, clawing at her sanity. "I'll finish this!" In an instant she shut the lid with a loud thud, a definitive and desperate finality. Shadows ricocheted off the walls, churning in response to her defiance, the voice roaring in anger. "You won't escape!" She stumbled back, breathless and frightened, heart racing like a wild animal trying to break free. The light above flickered violently, then plunged her into darkness. Where was the exit? Where were her children? As she fought to find her way amidst the chaos, a realization loomed like a stalker behind her. The answer lay within that chest, but now it was enraged. And if she didn't act fast, the darkness promised to consume her whole. Desperation blanketed her. What awaited her in the dark? Would she find a path to salvation, or would she be the next soul bound to the house? The shadows loomed larger, hunger radiating through the chilling silence. And all around her, the whispers returned, repeating one haunting phrase: "Join us." Where would she go from here? The moment of truth was racing toward her like an unrelenting tide. Would she dive into the depths of despair, or could she rise above what the house demanded? Time was slipping away. The room was a labyrinth of shadows, each corner teetering on the brink of nightmare, as Sarah's skin prickled with the chill of unseen eyes. She could barely move, could barely breathe. The whispers were louder now, more insistent, wrapping around her like chains. "Join us!" echoed in her mind, sending a wave of terror crashing over her. "Ethan! Mia!" she screamed, but the words splintered and disappeared into the darkness, suffocated by the sinister weight of the house. The shadows pulsed, jagged and alive, like a predator eager to pounce. She had to find her children, but the walls seemed to shift, restructuring under the oppressive force. Desperation clawed at her throat as she fumbled blindly, hands outstretched, trying to find a way back. The blackness was thick, choking her, and every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet a horrifying curiosity tethered her to that cursed chest. Could she bear to look inside again? Suddenly a scream erupted from beyond the walls, raw and piercing. "Mom! Help!" The anguished cry sent adrenaline coursing through her body, igniting her resolve. Ethan, her son, needed her. "Hold on! I'm coming!" she called, her voice stronger now, bolstered by the fierce love that surged within her. She turned, navigating the thick curtain of darkness, pushing through the tendrils that sought to ensnare her. The shadows recoiled with a hiss, furious at her defiance. With every step she felt eyes tracking her, lurking just out of sight, a silent audience to her ordeal. Panic bubbled inside her, threatening to spill over. If they were real, if her children were truly lost. "Mom!" Mia's voice shattered the silence like glass. "Where are you?" Fear surged, making her heart pound violently against her chest. She stumbled forward, desperate for the source of the sound, pulling against the unseen force that clawed at her legs. Suddenly, she hit the wall, her palms sliding across the cold, damp surface, searching for a door, a crack, anything to get her out. Then, through the haze of her panic, she felt a tug. Something was pulling her backward, a force more sinister than gravity itself. She gasped as something cold brushed against her neck, weaving through her hair like a whisper. The shadows were alive, and they were not alone. "Join us!" The voice coiled around her, seductive yet laced with venom. "Get away from me!" she shot back, summoning every ounce of strength. A flicker of light glimmered at the end of the hallway, hope born from fear. "Ethan, Mia, follow my voice," she shouted, willing her children to find their way through the muffling darkness. Each heartbeat sent shockwaves through her limbs, each second stretching on as long as an eternity. She rushed toward the light, forcing her way through the thick blackness that tried to swallow her whole. As she moved, she felt the presence grow bolder behind her, a whisper of cold air blowing across her back, almost playful in its malevolence. With every hurried step, the voice became frantic, now bitter. "You think you can escape our grasp?" it taunted. The sobs of children filled the air, not just hers, but voices that had long faded into this house's insidious lore. Just a little closer, she thought, willing her legs to push harder, to run faster, but when she reached the light, a shocking reality hit her. It wasn't an exit, it was a mirror, reflecting her terror-stricken face. In its depths, she saw shadows forming, twisting into grotesque figures with hollow eyes and grinning mouths. "No," she gasped, but it was too late. The mirror cracked, splintering with an ear-piercing shatter, and a wave of darkness burst forth like a flood, enveloping her completely. Those haunting cries turned into laughter, echoing in the chamber like a twisted symphony. And then it all went silent, the laughter fading into the clamor of her racing heart, a numbing stillness replacing the frenzy of fear that ruled a moment before. "Sarah?" echoed the voice again, now laced with eerie familiarity. "You belong to us." She was trapped, suspended in that suffocating silence, knowing her fate rested on the edge of a single decision. Was the darkness truly as powerful as it claimed? In that moment of utter despair, a single thought pierced through. I have to fight. For them. But what would the fight cost her? The shadows writhed, hungry for her essence. Would they take everything? Or was there a way to reclaim her power? Sarah's breath caught as a realization struck like lightning. The chest. In one final surge of bravery, she raised her voice. "I will not join you." But within her heart, doubt began to gnaw. What if she had already lost? The shadows hissed in response, eager to engulf her. The question lingered heavy like stone. How far would she go to save her children? And just as she resolved to plunge into the depths of the unknown, the darkness receded, retreating just for a moment, leaving the dreadful silence stretching out before her. The question thundered in her ears. Would she find the strength to reclaim what was lost, or would her final stand only shatter her family further? What had she unleashed, and how could she possibly contain it? The shadows were still lurking, and the battle was far from over. The silence felt almost tangible, pressing against Sarah's eardrums like a weight. Every nerve in her body screamed for action, yet she remained frozen in place, caught in the grip of the dark force clawing at her mind. The shadows shifted, swirling around her like a tempest, and deep within, the whispers braided into a sinister choir. "Join us!" they chanted, their voices harmonizing with a sickening sweetness. Each syllable sank deeper into her psyche, stoking her doubt and fear. "What do you want from me?" she shouted into the void. "Your children," came the reply, thick with mockery. "They are the key. Join us, in unity." The thought of Ethan and Mia, panic constricted around her heart. She strained against the shadows that pulled at her like a riptide, desperate to swim back to them. The darkness flickered, a heartbeat away from overpowering her. Summoning every ounce of willpower, Sarah steadied her breath. "I will find them," she declared. With defiance surging inside her, she took a step toward the direction of their cries. "Mom, help!" rang out once more, trembling with urgency. Each echo fanned the flames of her determination. She could feel the warmth of hope rising within her, like a tiny flame ignited by the chaos around her. She pressed on, pushing against the disorienting grip of shadows that tried to seep into her very being. They hurled their weight upon her, attempting to suffocate her spirit, but she fought back. The world around her began to ripple, colors bleeding and merging like a brush on canvas. She followed those vibrant swirls, allowing instinct to guide her. Suddenly she stumbled upon a threshold. The frame felt cool to her touch, the jagged edges biting into her trembling palms. Heart racing, she pushed through, feeling a rush of air, fresh yet heavy with a thick veil of dread. A new chamber stretched before her, larger and darker than she'd ever encountered, illuminated only by the flickers of ghostly lanterns that dangled like brittle bones from the ceiling. The whispers morphed into a low, ominous hum, thrumming through the air. "Ethan! Mia!" she called out, fear skimming her voice. The lanterns swayed eerily, and then silence. A chill swept through her, igniting a sense of dread that crawled up her spine. This place was somehow alive. She felt its pulse underfoot, the walls vibrating in resonance with some hidden horror. The children's cries grew fainter, beckoning her forward, each word slipping away like sand through her fingers. Sarah's breath quickened, tension twisted in her gut as she stepped deeper into the heart of the chamber. "Mom!" The voice, clear yet distant, rang out again. "I'm coming!" she screamed back, a desperate attempt to reach them, but all around her the very shadows began to pulse and writhe, coalescing into forms that clawed at her with long, grotesque fingers. She was not alone. From the depths of the darkness, seeds of despair took root in her mind, showing her visions of her children trapped, crying out for her. Their faces morphed, twisted in pain, and Sarah staggered back, battling the suffocating fear grasping at her throat. "No, not like this," she whispered, clenching her fists. But the shadows lunged, enveloping her in a thick fog of malice, every ounce of hope plunging into the hollows of despair. "You cannot escape, Sarah. You belong to us." The laughter, cruel and echoing, reverberated through the chamber, leaving her breathless. She fell to her knees, hands gripping the ground as the shadows closed in, eager to devour her. With the last flicker of resolve, she glanced toward the dim light far at the end of the chamber. There, flickering with an otherworldly glow, was the chest that had started it all. It loomed like a beacon of hope, even in her darkest hour. Could it hold the key to rescuing her children, or was it only a trap meant to ensnare her further? As she crawled toward the chest, the buzzing whispers surged louder, but through the chaos, her determination ignited. Just one more push, she thought, sensing that destiny was tethered to that cursed object. The shadows screeched around her, desperate to drag her back into the void. But she pressed on, grit in her heart, wondering if this last act could either break the chains binding her or shatter what little remained of her soul. Was this truly the battle for her children's lives, or would it seal their fates forever? In that moment, as hope flickered like a dying candle, she reached for the latch, trembling with dread and courage. What awaited her within that chest could change everything. Would she dare to look? The latch creaked as Sarah pulled it open, the sound slicing through the heavy silence like a knife. An unnatural wind burst from the chest, whipping around her, tangling her hair in a frenzy of chaos. She gasped as a blinding light spilled forth, illuminating the chamber with an eerie, spectral glow. "Mom! Help!" The call hit her square in the chest, louder now, and closer. Inside the chest lay an assortment of objects. They appeared ancient and grotesque, a rusting key, a shattered doll, and papers yellowed by time. At the very bottom, half buried in dust, was a small mirror, its surface rippling like water. Just as she reached for the mirror, the shadows converged fiercely, twisting around her arms, anchoring her to the spot. They constricted like a snake, threatening to crush her. "No, not again!" she cried, panic twisting her stomach, but she wouldn't let go. This was her one chance. With a primal scream, she yanked the mirror from the chest. The light intensified, flickering as though alive, bathing the chamber in a frigid luminescence. A shiver coursed through her, setting every nerve on edge. Instead of reflecting her image, the mirror revealed a scene. Ethan and Mia, trapped in a dark void surrounded by monstrous shapes, their faces pale with fear. "Sarah!" Their voices merged into one desperate plea, and her heart shattered at the sight. They were real, and they were in danger. The shadows shrieked, furious and insatiable, as their grasp weakened in the face of the mirror's light. "Stay with me, I'm coming!" she yelled, her voice choked with emotion, as she held the mirror closer, its energy surging through her like a jolt of electricity. "Join us!" The whispers hissed, echoing in agony. "You can't have them, you can't! Watch me!" She steadied her breath. She began to chant over and over, words swirling in her mind that felt ancient and powerful, like a forgotten incantation meant to expel the very darkness that gripped her. As she spoke, light cascaded from the mirror, pushing against the shadows that shrieked like enraged beasts. They bucked and twisted, retreating, but still they clung on, mocking her from the periphery. "Sarah!" A muffled voice whimpered, drawing her attention. She turned, her heart racing as the cries turned from distant echoes to pounding drums in her ears. In the depths of the chamber she could see shapes forming. Were they her children, or were they the cruel spectres playing tricks? The tension tautened, coiling around her as reality warped under the strain of her resolve. The shadows convulsed, drawing back slightly as if stung. "No, you can't leave, you belong to us! I won't!" she screamed, thrusting the mirror forward like a shield. As the light split the darkness, the shadows howled, and tendrils of despair writhed against the glowing barrier. Somehow the mirror was their bane, and yet calamity hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The children's cries resonated once more, full of terror, no longer distant. They were close, so close. Desperation gripped Sarah as she stumbled forward, dragging the mirror along. "Ethan! Mia, I'm here!" But then, as she reached farther into the light, the glow flickered ominously. The moment drew tight, anxiety clinging to her. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the chamber. The mirror trembled in her grip, and shards flew in a brutal arc. She gasped, instinctively shielded her face, but amid the chaos she glimpsed something, shadows shifting in the corner of her eye, dark figures rising from the ground. What else lurks in the dark? A voice slithered through the confusion, and as the light dimmed, a new horror threatened to reveal itself, pulling her back to the chilling realization that whatever next awaited, she was not alone. What awaited her in the depths of that chamber, and would it mean salvation or condemnation for her and her children? The air thickened, saturated with a chilling darkness that wrapped around Sarah like a cold shroud. She squinted, straining to see through the haze, while panic clawed at her throat. The shadows twitched near the edges of her vision, a hint of movement that made her pulse race. "Ethan! Mia!" Her voice echoed, a desperate cry swallowed by the oppressive gloom. Yet instead of silence, a low, mocking laughter responded, echoing off the chamber walls. It sent shivers down her spine, each note weighed down with malice. The shadows, once a mere background, now surged with a life of their own, creeping closer as if drawn by the lifeblood of her fear. With every beat of her heart, the mirror pulsed in her hand, a reminder of the connection she had to her children. But as the glass dimmed, she felt her hope flickering, like a candle in a hurricane. "Foolish girl," the voice slithered through the room, each word drawn out as if it was savoring her dread. "You think you can save them." The shadows twisted, writhing like serpents, and from their depths a figure gradually emerged. It was cloaked in darkness, an outline of a person that held an air of familiarity, but it was wrong, so grotesquely wrong. The face was obscured, but she could sense the grin, sharp and unsettling. "Join us." The hiss curled into her ears, sweetened with a deceptive promise. "Leave this wretched place behind." "No!" She shook her head, her heart racing. The anger surged within her, coursing through her veins like ice water. "I won't let you take them." With renewed determination, she raised the mirror, its light flickering vibrantly amidst the swirling shadows. The figure recoiled slightly, but it held its ground. "You think you wield that like a weapon, little girl?" It laughed, a sound that grated against her sanity. "It will not save you." The chamber trembled, and she realized the foundation beneath her feet was shifting. Cracks began to spider across the ground, dark tendrils seeping up like veins. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of dread wrapping around her. "Ethan! Mia!" she called again, desperation flowing into her voice like a lifeline. Somewhere in the darkness, their cries echoed in response, faint but unmistakable. They were trapped, bound by the same shadows that threatened to consume her. "With every moment," the cloaked figure said, its voice dripping with malice, "the chance for your escape fades. You will be one of us soon enough." Suddenly the mirror flared to life, burning bright in the swirling chaos. Light surged outward, illuminating the grotesque silhouettes that curled around her. The shadows shrieked, falling away from the mirror's brilliance like moths fleeing a flame. But the relief was fleeting. The bright glow illuminated the walls, revealing more shadows, more twisted faces, captured souls that wailed silently, pleading eyes begging for release. Each face carved deeper into her heart, feeding her terror. "Join them!" The figure cooed, unfazed by the brilliance. "You belong here!" Objects around the room began to tremble and shift as if responding to her fear. The rusting key rattled like a warning bell. The shattered doll seemed to twitch, eyes glimmering. Suddenly she realized there was something she could use. The key. Before she could think, she lunged toward the chest, scrambling for the key that might unlock the horrors surrounding her. As she grasped it, an electric shock jolted through her body, a tether pulling her toward the pit of shadows. "We will not let you—" The figure lunged forward, arms outstretched, dark energy crackling around it. She felt the shadows snatching at her heels, wrapping tighter, pulling her down into their embrace. But she couldn't. She refused. "Get away from me!" she screamed, the key raised high, the borrowed light from the mirror illuminating the dark. But what door would she unlock? A fine line stood between salvation and damnation, and as her heart thundered, she realized the truth. What if the key opened a door to something far more terrifying than she ever imagined? What lay beyond that threshold? Did the darkness have an escape, or would she step into a trap far worse? The key thrummed with a restless energy, radiating warmth through her clammy fingers as she dangled it between her and the encroaching darkness. Fear gripped her insides, a hollow ache that threatened to expand into sheer panic. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered, a plea lost within the howling shadows. The figure lunged again, dark tendrils burrowing into the ground, like restless spirits searching for life. The mirror pulsed, casting glimmers of light that danced chaotically in the gloom. Suddenly the air thickened, charged with desperation and dread, and the figure's laugh returned, low and leisurely, but now it had a new edge, a creeping malice that hinted that time was running short. "Do you really think that key can unlock anything but your own doom?" it taunted, its voice a sharp, slicing sound cutting through the eerie stillness. "Shut up!" she shouted, gripping the key tighter. With every heartbeat, doubt gnawed away at her resolve. What if she was meant to fail? What if she was just another lost soul, doomed to wander these haunted halls? The thought sent tremors through her limbs, but she couldn't give in. She wouldn't. Drawing a shaky breath, Sarah's gaze darted around the room. She could still hear Ethan and Mia calling in the distance, terrified voices trapped like birds in a cage. Their cries ignited a fire in her chest. "I have to find them!" she yelled, her voice breaking through the murky air. Without thinking, she turned and rushed toward the far wall where she could sense the twisting darkness thickening. She could feel it, an opening, a seam where shadows flickered like candlelight beckoning her closer. The figure shrieked, echoing around her, "You don't know what you're doing!" "Maybe not," Sarah muttered, her heart pounding in rhythm with her footsteps. "But I'm not backing down." As she pressed the key against the wall, a surge of energy pulsed through it, resonating through her bones. It felt alive, a heartbeat echoing her own. It was just a wall, but in that moment, it felt like the barrier between her and her children was defined by more than bricks and shadows. "Stop!" the figure screeched, scrambling to pull her back, but it was too late. The key slipped into the crack. A sudden chill rushed through the air, freezing her breath. The wall trembled, splintering like glass, revealing an eye, a single malicious orb that blinked in surprise. The gaze was filled with an unholy hunger, something ancient and dark that promised despair. Light burst forth, blinding and fierce. It poured into the room, washing over her like a flood. The shadows shrieked and writhed, battling against the brilliance, their form twisting and shriveling. But Sarah could feel the ties that bound her to them beginning to fray, just as she had hoped. The eye widened, and her heart sank. Not here! You don't belong here! It thundered, a voice filled with primal fury. Sarah stumbled back, blinded by the gleaming light spilling from the wall. But beyond the brilliance, she could hear them, Ethan and Mia, their voices clear, calling her home. It wasn't just the light that beckoned, it was the pull of love, the promise of family. As she leaned into the wall, a fierce determination surged through her. Would this doorway lead to her children, or to the darkness that shaped her worst fears? Just as she grasped her resolve, shadows began to surge back toward her, violent and furious. "You can't escape," the dark figure growled, its form advancing, no longer hidden. It was no longer a whisper, but a storm, ready to consume her whole. "Let them go!" she shouted, blue light flashing from the door behind her. "I'm coming for my family!" And with that, as the darkness surged, the ground shook violently. The mirror shattered, its shards cascading around her like falling stars, a million tiny reflections of terror. But in each spark she saw a flicker of hope, a path to salvation. "Sarah!" Ethan's voice cut through the tumult, a lifeline in the whirlwind. Would she find them, or would the shadows swallow her whole before she could make it through? With a desperate lunge toward that glowing opening, shadows snapped at her, hungry and relentless, but she leaped, arms outstretched, and then darkness enveloped her. She fell into the darkness. It wrapped around her like a shroud, suffocating and cold. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to escape, but the voices of her children pulled her deeper, weaving through the murk like threads of a fraying tapestry. "Mom!" Ethan's voice was frantic, raw with fear. "Where are you?" "Mia!" she called, her own voice trembling with desperation. A flicker of light struggled in the distance, twisting and warping, a corkscrew of clarity amidst the chaos. She forced herself to move, driven by the need to protect them, to find them. But the shadows shifted around her, thickening with each step. Figures emerged, distorted faces twisted in anguish, mouths open in silent screams. She stopped, heart pounding, panic clawing at her throat. Was this what awaited her if she failed? Souls ensnared by the malevolent force that pursued her. "Do you feel it creeping in?" A voice hissed from the darkness. "It knows your fears. It knows your guilt." "No!" Sarah shouted, grounding herself with the thought of Ethan and Mia. She took another step, bracing herself, pushing through the fear. The lingering thoughts of her failures gnawed at her. Times she thought she protected them, but led them straight into danger. Was she truly the monster lurking in these shadows? Ahead, the flickering light brightened, revealing a hallway lined with mirrors that reflected her distraught expression in infinite iterations, each one more haunted than the last. The voices grew louder and more panicked. She forced herself forward, refusing to let the creeping shadows pull her back. "Mum, help!" Mia's voice echoed, splintered and raw, as if the very fabric of her being was fraying. "Hang on, I'm coming!" Sarah shouted back, a rush of conviction igniting her heart. The mirrors began to vibrate, their surfaces rippling like water disturbed by stones. Each reflection twisted, revealing not just her own visage, but grotesque distortions of her children, screams frozen in glass, eyes wide with terror. "Stop!" The dark figure rang out behind her, slicing through the cacophony. "Those aren't your children anymore. They belong to me." "No!" She stepped closer, heart racing, fists clenched. "You can't have them!" With renewed vigor, Sarah lunged toward the nearest mirror. The key pulsed at her side. She could feel its warmth glowing, urging her on. The moment her fingertips brushed the glass, she was sucked through, the world spinning into oppressive heat and blinding light. She landed hard, the air crackling with energy. Shaking off the disorientation, she found herself in a vast room, the light so bright it almost hurt. White walls echoed with muffled cries, and in the middle stood Ethan and Mia, trembling, held captive by thick strands of shadow that coiled around them like snakes. A surge of relief washed over her. They were here, alive. "Mom!" they cried in unison. their faces smeared with desperation. The dark figure loomed at the edge of the light, its form obfuscated yet palpable, teeth glinting in a smirk. "You can't save them, Sarah. You have to choose. Leave now or be consumed by the darkness." That moment stretching everything she was up to the breaking point. Anxiety clawed at her heart. She could feel the shadows pulling at her heels. "No!" She stepped forward, determination fueling her every movement. "I will not choose. I'll fight for them." With that, the key suddenly ignited in her grasp, pulsing with energy, and the room erupted into chaos. The walls trembled, cracking and splintering under the pressure of her resolve. But just as hope flared, the darkness surged forward, a monstrous wave that swept away everything in its path. "Let go!" the figure howled, the sound gouging at her sanity. And in that moment, Sarah understood the true nature of the darkness. It thrived on fear and despair, infecting thoughts like poison. "Not now!" She swung the key. "I'll break your hold." A blinding flash erupted, and for a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the air. Was this her victory, or was it merely the calm before the storm? But the shadows roared in defiance, crashing against her resolve. She gritted her teeth, ready to face the oncoming tide. How could she defeat a force that thrived on despair? As the darkness rushed closer, hot and suffocating, she knew one thing. There was no backing down now. But were the children truly safe, or was she just trading one trap for another? Only time would tell, but the darkness wouldn't wait. The shadows thrashed around Sarah, their malevolence pulsing with every heartbeat. Her children were right in front of her, cocooned in a web of darkness, and their cries echoed through the chamber. "Mom, don't leave us!" The darkness roared in response, furious that she had made it this far. Sarah felt the weight of despair nipping at her heels. "You're not taking them. Not now, not ever." The conviction surging through her ignited a fierce flame, and without hesitation she thrust the key toward the tumultuous shadows. "This ends now." With her voice amplified by resolve, she slammed the key into the ground. The echo amplified, merging into a booming pulse that sent shockwaves rippling through the room. The shadows hesitated, briefly faltering in their relentless advance, as if sensing a change in the air. In that moment of precarious stillness, Sarah stepped closer to her children. "Hold on! I'm coming!" Her voice was infused with determination. They needed her. She could feel their energy coiling around her like a safety net, reminding her of everything worth fighting for. "Please, help us," Mia wailed, her little voice trembling. That raw plea sent waves of energy cascading through Sarah. She would not let fear define their fates. Drawing on every ounce of her courage, she focused on the glowing light of the mirror, urging it to guide her. An ancient power surged from the key, conducting through her fingers and igniting her very soul. The shadows shrieked as the light intensified, expanding like the first dawn of a new day, pushing back the oppressive darkness. "Stand united!" she called out, hoping her voice could penetrate the foreboding atmosphere. "You are stronger than fear! We're together now!" As the brilliance spread further, she reached for her children, their small hands trembling through the shadows. The dark tendrils recoiled, shrieking and screeching, revealing glimpses of trapped souls lost in sorrow. But she found her strength in those flashes. The faces reminded her she wasn't alone in this fight. With a final determined scream, she rushed forward, plunging into the mass of shadows as the light burned brighter, engulfing her entirely. Time distorted. Chaos churned around them. But all that mattered was the connection she felt with Ethan and Mia. In that moment she no longer feared the darkness. Instead, she harnessed its energy, channeling it into something greater. The key became a beacon of hope, illuminating the suffocating blackness with warmth and clarity. The shadows writhed, twisting. Then they began to splinter, fracturing under the intensity of the light. "Yes, we can break free," she shouted, fully embracing the power that surged through her. "Together." The surge swelled until it erupted, sending forth a wave of pulsating light that tore through the wall of shadows. The energy rippled, and Sarah felt it thrumming against her skin, vibrating with every beat of her heart. A blinding flash erupted, cutting through the layers of darkness. A flood of warmth enveloped her. It shimmered bright and secure. She felt the dark weight lifting, vanishing like a receding tide, revealing the raw edges of their reality once again. And in the center of that brilliance stood Ethan and Mia, freed from their ensnarement. They rushed into her embrace, their bodies warm and reassuring. She held them tightly, feeling their heartbeat against her chest, and for a moment all the fear washed away. "Mom, you did it!" Ethan sobbed, relief and joy bubbling over as he instinctively clutched onto her as if to make sure she was still there. "We're together," she reassured, her voice teetering on the edge of tears. "Always together." But a furious growl reverberated behind them, and the dark figure began to rise anew, desperate and ferocious. "You think this is over? You can't escape. Watch us!" Sarah barked, holding the shimmering key high, summoning the last remnants of light within her. The darkness thrashed, but it was not just isolated. It was now a vast battlefield. Each fragment of her fears, every pain, clung and battled within the shadows. With grit in her heart, she began to chant, her voice steady and unwavering. The key pulsed brightly, a whirlwind of energy encircling them in a protective cocoon. The shadows shrieked, their power crumbling as the unified force of love surged, pushing harder against the oppressive tide. "Join us!" the figure hissed, taking threatening steps forward as reality cracked around them. "Not anymore!" she screamed. "We're done being scared!" "Let's do this together," Mia echoed, her small voice solidifying their resolve. And in unison they tossed the key into the churning mass of darkness. An explosion of light erupted as it collided, scattering the shadows and igniting their bonds with radiant energy, demolishing the figure into wisps of smoke that dissipated into nothingness. The chamber trembled as waves of energy pulsed outward from where the key had shattered the darkness. The walls erupted with luminescent cracks, spilling warmth and brilliant light, breaking free of the sinister grip that had bound them for far too long. "We did it!" Ethan shouted as they felt the last remnants of darkness evaporate, replaced by an overwhelming sense of safety. But as they held each other close, Sarah knew this victory had come at a price. The shadows had left their mark, and it would take time for the lingering effects to fade completely. Yet here, surrounded by love, she realized that those shadows would no longer govern her life. Her family was, and always would be, her light, the reason to keep fighting against the darkness. As the air lightened and the taint of despair faded, they stepped out from the remnants of the chamber into the world beyond. Dust hung in the air like glitter, swirling through beams of sunlight that pierced the old home they had settled in. Sarah took a deep breath, grateful for the chaotic journey that had led them to this moment of liberation. "We'll make new memories," she whispered, squeezing Mia and Ethan's hands tightly. "Stronger memories." With hope dancing in their hearts, they stepped into the new day, together. The echoes of the shadows lingered just below the surface, dormant but not entirely vanquished. But Sarah knew that as long as they stood united, they could face whatever came next. After all, the power of love and family was brighter than any darkness. And with that thought soothing her soul, they left behind the old house and walked into a future forged by resilience, healing, and unwavering hope. Now, if you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion, don't miss out. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support our journey together. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this wild adventure. It helps us grow. And lastly, please instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion because you know they'll love it. This is the moment to show your support for the channel, so don't wait even one more second.